Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Who forgot to press the start record button when they did it the first time? That'd be this dude. This is the news roundup of all the interwebs of board game happenings in the last couple weeks. And it's going to be, just a jam-packed filled video because I had enough stuff to do a whole video previously, but now with the Dice Tower's announcement of all the other things that went along their live stream and picking and, choosing from publishers here and there and trying to go on Twitter and social media and Burgundy, I'm just going to tell you all the stuff that I saw, heard, and was excited by. All in a news video, all right in a concise source, and I'm going to start right from the beginning with the most exciting stuff that has me the most pumped and the things I'm just, most, excited about in general. So let's just do this. Let's go straight into it. As always, boom, let's go. First up, this is the most exciting thing. This is already shooting super far up my wish list. This is Greater Than Games. They coincided it with a Shut Up and Sit Down re-review of Spirit Island originally, and it just, it's probably, I won't say it's my #1 game of all time, but it's really in my top 5. It's Spirit Island. It's more Spirit Island. Can you not have enough Spirit Island? I cannot have enough Spirit Island. We already know that Nature Incarnate is going to be launching sometime, I believe, in October. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but that's going to be on BackerKit. But they've just announced basically a Target version of Spirit Island, if you will. And some people are going to poo-poo that. Some people are, do we need this? Because that was the comment section when you saw Terra Nova announced by Capstone Games for the equivalent version, a lighter version, a more streamlined version of Terra Mystica. This is the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion to Gloomhaven as Horizons of Spirit Island is to Spirit Island, if you will. And it's going to be coming at a retail availability in October at Target, and that's where the other similarity is. Personally, I think the artwork is great in these games. I love it from this aspect. It's not going to appeal to everybody. People poo-poo this all the time. People on Reddit were like, oh, is that the cover? I hope that's a prototype. Come on, man. This is good cover art. I look at tons of crowdfunding all the time, and this is better than 90% of the stuff I see on crowdfunding easily from that aspect. So again, get over yourself sometimes when it comes to that. But these are going to be new spirits, new accessibility, ease of play, streamlining it, getting into this game to make it more approachable and make it more wide market. If that doesn't intrigue you, if that doesn't excite you as a gamer to get more people into the hobby, it should. And the nice thing about this is they say these spirits are going to be compatible with Jagged Earth as well as Spirit Island, the original base game, as well as the promos. And it's not going to be, like the lighter version, and you're not going to be able to use them. Is the fear of some of these situations. Like I'm looking at Marvel United and Marvel United X-Men. Some of the heroes from Marvel United aren't just going to be, as compatible, or I'm never going to play with them again because of the power creep, and because in a good way in Marvel United X-Men, but in a bad way for people that have some of the first edition from Marvel United. And so that's what makes it super cool. And I am just super, super excited about this one. It's near the top of my wish list now that it's been announced, and I'll be picking up as soon as I can from a retail location near me at the first available date. Awesome. Whether or not I'll play the game or trying to incorporate it when, get my kids to play, that's a whole nother different situation that we'll kind of deal with. But either way, new spirits, new islands, new Spirit Island stuff, I'm all for it from that aspect of things. Next up, we have Dune. In case you don't have enough Dune in your life, Dune is becoming the news like zombies. People saying oversaturated. CMON has picked up the license for Dune in that sense, and they're doing War for Arrakis. Now, why does that sound vaguely familiar? Because War of the Rings. It is the 2-player version of War of the Rings for Dune, where you're going house to house, head to head in this 2-player battler with tons of miniatures. Doesn't that sound right up CMON's alley? It does for me. And you're going to be going, 1 versus 1 in this game. And I love the idea of War of the Rings. I'm never going to play War of the Rings. I'm never going to play it. That's why I haven't bought it. Otherwise, I would have bought it by now. It'd be in my collection because it's a great game. I think it's a great game. I think I'd love it. I don't have anyone to play it with. So I'm not going to pick up this one either because it's not going to change things. If I want a 2-player game like this, I'm going to pick up the new one coming out from Ares Games, the War of the Ring, the card game, which is going to be much more approachable, easy to play, and more easy to teach. And that's the biggest concern I have with this, especially with the 16 different boxes that you're going to be getting. We'll talk about that later shipping wise at the end of the video. So that's what's coming out from CMON. I was doing the first time I did this, the first time around, all my CMON ones separately because there's like 4 CMON announcements that got announced in the last 2 weeks, so we'll just do them back to back here in this case, because then CMON will pay me my promotional fee and I can get the money from that side of things. I'm not getting paid to do this. I just talk about stuff. The boys are getting a crossover with Zombicide, and you can get the boys and 7, the 7, if you will, if you're familiar with the series at all. You can get all 3 boxes of the characters from this series on Amazon as Zombicide characters in packs 1 and 2. And now they have to fight the Zombicide threat, and they're going to all be able to be played as player characters. So if that interests you, great. If you're not a Zombicide fan, if you're not a boys fan, this probably has no interest to you whatsoever. Stranger Things has actually been co-opted, and by I mean that literally and figuratively, by CMON as well. And we're going to see a cooperative game come out to the retail side of things with Rob DeVoe at the helm. And that's going to be coming out in 2023. We don't really know any of the details yet, but we're going to see what it entails and whether or not this IP can be used in a great way from a cooperative standpoint. I'm looking at more of like Horrified, the Horrified games, Horrified and Horrified New Americans, or whatever that one is. I'm looking at that style of game that I think it's going to be more like, rather than other things. But we'll see, because I trust him to make a good, solid game, whether or not it's for me. And I jumped off the bandwagon of Stranger Things. I watched season 3. Season 3 jumped the shark. I haven't watched season 4 yet. So we'll see where it goes. And maybe I'll get eventually around to watching it. But if the game can be an actually good, mechanically sound game, I'll be in from that standpoint. Last up from CMON, we have a new announced hero, only available at Comic-Con this last weekend, Grey Hulk. That's really irritating for me as someone who loves Marvel United. They're going to offer a whole new character deck there that I'm probably not going to be able to get as a promotional side of things. Also, if you missed my video from yesterday, that was talking about promotions and especially from the side of now media that I'm on, content creator, whatever you want to call it, that they're being offered like, exclusive swag, exclusive looks, NDAs, all sorts of, new games that are coming out that you can actually walk away with. And it's just sort of one of those things that is coming out and we're going to be more of away from the promotional side of things from a consumer standpoint that we saw more pre-pandemic. So is this good? Is this bad? Is this somewhere in between? Is this a resurgence of those promos and exclusivity? Because if you know CMON, that's not going to be widely available in any aspect. So that was also out there as well. Next up, speaking of, let's just skip over to the last one because it will tie it in here. Stranger Things, Ozark, as well as Squid Games have been announced for Netflix's tie-in from an IP standpoint in the board game scene. And so what we're getting here with Stranger Things is a social deductive 2 versus 2, I think, or 4 versus 4 style game where you're trying to figure out who's insane or who's possessed by the demon or something along those lines. The problem I have with this is all of these are coming to retail, and I'm a little bit concerned about the actual mechanics as opposed to maybe the other Stranger Things game led by Rob, who is going to have a higher pedigree than necessarily some of these. And so, we'll see. They're all three thematically and mechanically different, and they sort of tie in with the game, so we'll see what they look like, but I'm not going to hold my breath in terms of picking these up right away as I might with the other Stranger Things games or, Spirit Island, Horizon of Spirit Island in that sense. Squid Game is going to be more of a team versus team, almost like Captain Sonar, if you will, where you can have, apparently I think it's set up to 12 people per team, and you're going to be going through the 6 games that they play in the original Squid Game. And it's a great series, but I'm not sure I want to play this as a game. So how replayable, how different is this going to be from a party style scene of things? Again, there you go. And then last but not least, you have Ozarks, which is more of an area control game from 2 to 5 players, and what that's going to entail and what mechanisms that's going to make it unique from and really make you want to play, especially if you're not a fan of Ozarks in the first place, which is basically a guy goes down to the Ozarks in Missouri and becomes a money launderer down there, as opposed to the money launderer he was in the big city, and has to deal with the local crime and the local crime syndicates and all of those dynamics from that aspect. So that is what's coming out from Netflix on the board game scene of things in the near future. Next up, we have something coming out from Disney. If this looks somewhat familiar, they did a Marvel one of these where there's expandable card game that come in these little like balls that you can open, and this is the Disney version of it essentially, and it just has all your favorite characters. But this is from Funko, and again, Funko has a relatively solid track record, not spectacular but solid. It's just a question of whether or not these game balls and these super game packs are going to be really that good, or if the game is going to be better than the Marvel one, because the Marvel one really is kind of poopy. And so I don't have high hopes for this, but as someone who can get the Disney style stuff played a little bit easier, I'll definitely have my eye on it, especially for my 2-year-old who is gradually starting to want to grab pieces off of the table and run away with them. Not play with them yet, but we'll incorporate him at some point in the near future. So maybe something like this. Now we are going over to the other huge one that got announced this week. This is Dune Imperium. It's getting a second expansion already before the end of the year, and this is going to be Immortality, where you are having a new house that's going to be genetically grafting cards, allowing you to play 2 cards per turn essentially. And I'm assuming that that's going to come at a price, but it doesn't actually talk about the actual mechanism of what that's going to entail. But this is probably going to push me over the edge of getting the first expansion, The Rise of Ix. And so we'll see what this does, and is this too much? Is this going to be just too much overall? But it will, they say, fit in the big box that's already out there, so you don't have to fear in case you've already picked up the first expansion, the big box and the deluxeifications. This will all fit in with that. And I am just intrigued by this. Again, I don't know what this is going to do, and I worry that it's going to bring too much overhead or too much complexity or too much length to a game like this that is already so well thought of. But I trust Direwolf, and I want to see what they can do with this. And this is, again, shooting up near the top of the hotness and the wish list for me already just with this announcement. Speaking of things that are going to be very much along that line, this is from Unexpected Games. This is called 3000 Scoundrels, which was also just recently announced, a 2 to 4 player game that's going to take you approximately an hour and a half. Now, why am I intrigued by this? Because the combination is up to 3000 scoundrels, and they're using AEG's sort of clear card mechanism to create different scoundrels that are combination or combinatorial. You know what I'm saying. Different combinations of cards allowing you to create different overall effects, but you're going to be playing with up to 50 of these scoundrels in the first place in every single game. What you're doing is you're laying a card down and it's activating whatever corresponding spots are on the board that go along with it. But the tricky part is you're bluffing potentially. Is you're laying down, like say an ace, and you say I lay down a king, and so you don't know if I actually lay down an ace. Am I taking the advantage of the king's abilities because I need them more this turn? And you're trying to decide whether or not it's an element of BS. And so if that intrigues you, if that entices you, if that really enthralls you like it does me, that's really going to be appealing. But if it doesn't, then you're going to be easy pass on this one probably. I really like the idea of this, and I really like the idea of the take that in the sense that, if you get called out and you're wrong, well, it's really going to hurt you. In BS, it can kind of hurt you, but it can also not really hurt you. You're going to have an asymmetric leader that's going to give you different abilities to utilize and different strengths and cunning tricks that are going to be to your advantage. And I really think this could be cool. And so I think this could be a great 2 to 4 player, interesting, dynamic, group dependent style of game. Now we have Czech Games, and Czech Games just recently announced Deal with the Devil, but I'm also going to talk about Starship Captains down here because Deal with the Devil is a very interesting 3-role worker placement asymmetric style game where you are going for a different goal, but it plays up to 4 people. So you can have different people on different teams that are going to be trying to achieve different things as you're trying to build buildings in this world where you can, create deals, including selling parts of your soul in order to achieve them faster, quicker, or better than your opponents. But careful, don't want to sell too much. Otherwise, you're not going to live to tell the tale at the end. The other one here that's been on my radar for a long time and that I've sort of hoped for greatness with is Starship Captains here. We'll load up the page here and you can see Starship Captains. This is a take on the sort of Captain is Dead, only from a competitive side of things where you are upgrading your characters, your ship, and everything in between, trying to become the best Star Trek pseudo-esque captain that you can. Promote your crew, upgrade your ship, deal with pirates, everything in between. I think this has all the hits of a sleeper hit of 2022. Both of these games are going to be coming out around the time of Essen, so check those out if you will. Next up, we have Hickory Dickory, Q4 2022 from Plaid Hat. Plaid Hat is giving us another animal-themed based game, and this one essentially is going to be very much a Hickory Dickory Dock. The mouse ran around the clock, if you know what I mean, because the mice that you are playing as are going to run around this metaphorical clock here. We'll blow up the picture a second, and you can check it out what's going on here as you go around, take various actions as you jump off at different times, and in order to collect different resources, which are going to allow you to collect victory points in this, I'm assuming, round-based game, but it doesn't really say what the end game victory condition is going to be, essentially, apart from the fact that when it strikes midnight, the game is going to be over. So it'd be interesting dynamic split, and because people sometimes like that element of how games end, and sometimes people don't, but it definitely has a different aesthetic. And if they can incorporate these mechanics in all these different spaces and working well and different asymmetry that's going to go along with each of your different creatures, I'm really intrigued to see what Plaid Hat can do. Now we have the latest of Ospreys. Osprey is announcing Undaunted Battle of Britain because this is going to be along their lines of the lighter deck building style war games that have won so much appeal over the last 1.5 to 2 years. And this is going to be slightly different because this is going to be Battle of Britain, which is in the air. In case you were not familiar or are not familiar with this, or in case you had no interest in the ground style combat before, like me, this aerial combat done in a different way. Now they don't say how it's going to be different, but it's definitely more nuanced than ground combat. I am definitely intrigued. Is it enough to get me into the war game, even though it's a deck building side of things, though? That's going to be the question. That's going to be the tension. And it's really going to have to see, because they've said that they're going to be appealing to their hardcore fan base that already loves the other stuff, but also allowing an easier entry point in addition to this game and series as well. So there you go. Now, next up from City of Kings, we have, well, you may know them from City of Kings, or maybe more famously at this point, Isle of Cats. This is going to be the follow-up game to Isle of Cats, although this is going to be completely different and completely, thematically the same, but different in the mechanical aspects, in the sense that you are no longer tile placement. You are taking the cats that got left behind, that were not rescued on your boats in the Isle of Cats, and you are going to do a social puzzle game where you're trying to figure out what to do with the cats that are left behind. That's all we know, though. And so they're going to announce more, but you know, City of Kings has really probably stepped up their game in terms of their last couple games, and it seems to be getting better as they go along. So I'll give it a benefit of the doubt and a shout, because Isle of Cats is highly underrated in the first place. So there you go, Isle of Cats. Now, from Horrible Guild, we have two things quickly from Horrible Guild. First is The Great Split, is a drafting game where you're trying to get riches, and this is a set collection style game where you have a hand of cards, you split it into two, you pass those cards to your person on your left. The person on your left chooses which pile they want, sends you back the pile that they don't want. So you have to be very careful on the I cut, you choose mechanism, but the person on your left, or the person on your right, is going to be doing the same thing as well. So you're going to be splitting and choosing at the same time as the person on your left, and rinse and repeat, taking those riches back. This is a very interesting aspect because it's a 2 to 7 player game that sort of gives me vibes of Between Two Cities, only a little bit more up my ilk with the set collection style victory point conditions. That's about all we know from Horrible Guild, so we'll see what else they have in store for us. Second up here from Horrible Guilds, we have The King's Dilemma. If you're familiar with this game, originally, Nan, you couldn't play it because you didn't have the right style group or a consistent group for a 3 to 4 player legacy style campaign game. Well, now you can play it solo on Steam. They're offering the RPG style head of council game, allowing you to do that in a virtual video game style setting. We're also seeing Black Rose Wars, which is going that way digitally in the lines of Gloomhaven as well as Root and the Direwolf side of things. And we'll just kind of see, because are more games going to go this way, and how different other video game adaptations going to be in the future. So interesting stance there. Now we have Steamforged Games is acquiring Rivet Wars. This is the CMON from way back when, a 2-player tactical miniature-driven game where you are basically steampunk-esque war machines with unicycles and armor-plated cavalry and diesel-powered engines to battle across a field. And we'll see what Steamforged can do. They're definitely miniature-heavy, so we know that they can put that out. But can they revive this game, which is thought of as underrated from a tactical miniature standpoint? Then we go over and we have another Ticket to Ride game. This is called Ghost Train. This is a kids version. I'd say right now, why get this kids version over the other 2 kids versions that are already out there? The one that I have that I've already played a couple dozen times. And they give you one essentially new interesting mechanism. If you connect to Town Hall, you get to draft 2 extra cards. Otherwise, it just basically takes the kids version of Ticket to Ride, including the crossed board bonus achievement, and just rinses, repeats, puts a different theme on it, and makes it a little bit friendlier from a I actually recognize these in Halloween from that aspect, rather than, random places in America or Europe that the other 2 versions have. If you don't have enough Ticket to Ride, there you go. There's another one for your collection if you're like one of those people that collects all the Ticket to Rides, like the people that collect all the Catans. Then last up, we have Damio. This is in the world of Stone Sword Games' previous game, Senjutsu. You may remember that 2-player tactical battler in the lines of more of a 3D version, or of Exceed or Battlecon, or maybe more like the Street Fighter the miniature game, if you will. It's more like that. This is a 4X, more streamlined style, medieval Japan style game where you have Martin Wallace designing it. That's going to make it more accessible and more miniature heavy, just like Senjutsu was, which is probably going to price it out from my standpoint. But from a thematic incorporation of forging alliances, moving an army around, and discovering, exploring, and battling in this world, I really like the idea of it, at least in the first place. So that's going to be interesting. It says sometime, I believe, in Q4 or autumn of 2022. So we'll see. That's not much time to get some announcements going and to get the hype train moving. So we'll see where Stone Sword Games goes and what we have with Damio Battle for Japan in the near future. Next up on the Hotness, we have Moonrakers, and Moonrakers is still going strong. We have Titans, the Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign with the 3 expansions that just launched, Nomad's Binding Ties, as well as Overload. I will say it's a deck builder that it's unlike anything you've ever played, but it needs a good 3 to 4 player group, essentially. It's not going to thrive necessarily the best at 2, and you really need a group that is good at dynamics, negotiations, allegiances. Negotiation as a whole is really just necessary regardless, and otherwise it's really going to potentially flounder. And so it just really depends on your group. I will also say it's probably one of the best solo aspect deck builders I've ever played. Not two-handed, but actually solo. And so that can't be duplicated by many other games out there. But the problem with it is that, is $150 worth of deck builder your ilk, whether or not both of those things or either of those things is really what you're looking for. Next up we have, this is Living Forest from Ludonaut. And this was just the announced winner of the Kennerspiel Award. This is sort of a press your luck deck building style game where you are playing cards trying to build or plant up to 12 trees while negotiating attacks and trying to manage spirits and animals that are in the forest. It is definitely a different game. It's a little bit divisive. It's not, fully, great reviews across the board. People seem to like it, but not really necessarily absolutely love it. But if it's winning Kennerspiel, it really has to be solid in terms of its mechanisms and its appeal. And so Kennerspiel is always going to be the little bit lighter one, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. And from a filler standpoint, this is probably pretty solid, because also bad games don't win those awards, period. So check that out if you have any interest. For me, it's probably a try before I buy from that aspect. Next up, you have Planet B, which is coming from Hans im Gluck, which probably is hitting a little bit too close from home, because this is a game about worker placement mechanisms that are taking the theme incorporation of evil corporations that are focusing on crooked deals, greed, and use of those workers in not so scrupulous ways in order to advance your corporation's agenda. In the end, though, they say, the only thing that matters is who has pocketed the most governmental money. Ain't that the truth? So that's hitting a little bit close to home, especially in these current climate conditions of what's going on in capitalism. Capitalism. That's a hard word to say 5 times fast, but you know what I'm saying, and that's why it's on the hotness right now. Also, we have Oathsworn, which is still in the process of delivering this boss battler that is getting all the rage, the secret hidden mystery boxes, the half a dozen Board Game Geek threads that are popping up each day in my news feed for my subscription. And we're going to see where this goes, because they've also announced a reprint before the end of the year with new stuff as well, and I'm assuming this is going to be on Kickstarter because that's where the first one was, and they haven't announced anything different. And so we'll see what it entails, how good does it actually stand up, and where is it going to fall ultimately in the boss battler hierarchy or tier ranking, essentially, that this is becoming all the rage of. We're seeing more and more of it. So it's going to be on the hotness for a while. Get used to seeing it on there. Then last up on the hotness, we have Northward Uncharted Lands, because it is also being delivered to crowdfunding backers right now. You are trying in this 4X Norse-based mythology game, trying to be the best faction that expands and conquers the most land based on the video game IP in the first place. They say streamlined mechanics and ease of play are going to make it a little bit more accessible from a 4X side of things. Reviews are relatively good so far, but we'll see as more backers and more reviews come in where it sort of falls. Now we have King of Tokyo. No, just kidding. King of Monster Island. It's also on the hotness because someone linked over to it on Reddit. I've been talking about it for about the past 2 months now. If you've missed either of my other 2 videos mentioning it, this is the cooperative version of King of Tokyo, and it probably has one of the highest I want it values for me from a retail side of things for the past year. And it's just going to be an awesome dice checker cooperative experience. It's still coming from Richard Garfield, and I can't wait to see. The problem is they haven't really released any more information, even though we know it's supposedly, I guess, going to be coming out between now and the end of the year. So it's super high on my list. Last up on the hotness, we have Darkest Dungeon, and this is just creeping on the edge of the hotness right now, but that's because Mythic just announced that all of their backers are essentially going to have to pay somewhere between something like $20 and $50 in extra shipping, and people aren't terribly happy about it. And I'll say this as a side note, I'm able to put a video out by the end of the week of this as well, because I haven't talked about shipping enough, and I know everybody likes to talk about shipping. All the other major channels are doing it, so why not do it too? But if you're surprised by shipping at this point, or the rise or the price increase of shipping, you shouldn't be. You're getting boxes and boxes of big plastic heavy chunks, and who's surprised that that's going to cost more? Publishers aren't willing or able to subsidize it nearly as much as they used to, or be as transparent as they can, but you just can't on a crowdfunding page nowadays of trying to predict what it's going to be a year to a year and a half later. And it's just going to be the norm. And I say this on my roundup video almost on a weekly basis. If you are looking at shipping prices being your make it or break it, you shouldn't be backing that game in the first place, period. I know you might not like that sentiment, but it's true. It's true. I'm sorry. There you go. That is the hotness. So there you go. That is what I got. A little bit out of order, a little bit all over the place, a little bit of everything in between. The hotness was a lot shorter this week because a lot of the things that I covered on the news roundup were on the hotness too. So it made it easy from that standpoint. So there you go. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for clicking. Best news roundup on the interwebs. You can get all your stuff here and not need to go elsewhere, but you can go elsewhere too. I don't really care. I'm not a jealous type, but if you want to give me a sub too, that'd be cool. Still trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. I don't think it's going to happen. Still going to try though. Like I said, a couple other reviews out later this week, a couple good games I played, a couple things in between, and maybe some shipping and maybe some other stuff as well. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. Those are my rambles and everything else in between. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. I'll see you around.